call on France to stay out of African affairs, in particular the Pan-African Parliament. We further make a call to all African youth in Francophone countries to fight the France agenda to keep Africa and its leadership chained to imperialist interest.
France has had a lot of impact in African countries. More so Western countries, we see since colonial period up to now, France is still having a lot of influence. And Julius Malema has been a frontline saying that France should go back to their country. France should go. France should go. It's one thing that I've seen Julius Malema fighting for France, the white people, and name all of that. In today's video, I'm going to react on a video of Julius Malema. It's various videos where he was telling the France to go back to their land, to leave Africans' business alone. Let's watch the videos and then we go react on it as we do always.
Aware that some of these military takeovers are instigated and funded by the colonial forces, particularly France, which continues to micromanage the politics and economies of the countries it colonized. All progressive forces must reject France's interference in the African continent. The EFF in South Africa will therefore, before the end of May 2022, convene International Continental Summit of all EFF-aligned structures all over the continent to talk about progressive socialist agenda for the world ahead and giving each other practical support towards the establishment of the EFF all over the continent. As EFF structures in the continent, we must support each other and must demand political and economic emancipation in all countries where they have not achieved. Since its formation, PAP has not had any president from the northern and southern region. The East, the West, and Central region, dominated by Francophone countries, have historically used their numerical strength to block the practice of rotation. Despite the AU's advice that PAP must comply with the rotational principle, the dominant region sought to ignore this and proceed with elections. Over the years, France has manipulated these numbers to impose a candidate of their choice. This explains why during last term elections, the France foreign minister addressed PAP without initially being scheduled in accordance with the program soon after a Francophone candidate was elected. Similarly, it is no coincidence that the President Emmanuel Macron's visit to South Africa coincided with PAP's program to elect a president, which means Macron, like his Minister of Foreign Affairs, was meant to give a surprise visit and address the Pan-African Parliament with the hope that PAP will have elected their supported Francophone candidate. The refusal to implement the principle of rotation was to make way for the highly sponsored Mali candidate who landed with a private jet in South Africa. However, thanks to the resistance and formidable spirit of the Southern Caucus, supported by the Northern Caucus and all progressive members of the Pan-African Parliament, France's plot was defeated. We call on France to stay out of African affairs, in particular the Pan-African Parliament. We further make a call to all African youth in Francophone countries to fight the France agenda to keep Africa and its leadership chained to imperialist interest.
In this day and era, you still have a situation where there are African states paying colonial tax to France. France, it is what it is because of those African states. You have the reserve banks of African states in France and not in Africa itself. And we must accept that and say it is acceptable, it is in the interest of Africa. It is not. We want Africans to have control over their own currency. We want Africans to have control over their own economy and what constitutes their own economy. Our struggle seeks to inspire that. We cannot protect white privilege at the expense of the majority African people in South Africa and the whole entire African continent. We are hated for saying that. We are hated for demanding that we must all be treated as equals. It's not going to change that. We will rather die for a dream that is going to be realized by many generations after us. Even if we don't realize it ourselves, we've made a commitment to lay a firm foundation for generations to come. We seek to inspire confidence amongst many, many, many African masses that they must stand on their own.
Now, first of all, don't forget to subscribe on my YouTube channel. And again, if you love the videos, there is a super thanks button there. You can do something for me. You can join the membership channel. You can comment. You can like. Just support a brother from Africa. I am the Kenyan Beast. Now, France impact on Africa. We have a colonization and exploitation since from 19th to mid 20th century up to now. France is still exploiting Africa. France has influence on our cultural influence because we've been using their money, been using their language, cultural influence from France. Neo-colonization again. We have a lot of things that France has done to African countries, positive and negative, but more so negative are the one that only came to our eyes because the countries that have been led by France, they are going through a lot and we can see its evidence. So as long as we have positive impacts, but negative impacts is like 90%. Positive contribution that France has done to these countries, like France has played a role of infrastructure, healthcare, and education, partnering in development programs and humanitarian aids. However, these efforts are often seen as insufficient compensation for the historical exploitation and control of France exerted over African nations. So they can build a 1 kilometer road and exploit 1,000 kilometers road. So it's not evident that much that's positive. The infrastructure they have kept these countries is not that evident. Julius Malema has complained or has been telling France to go back because of these issues. Because the leader of EFF is from South Africa, has been vocal to his call of African nation to reduce France's influence, especially over former colonies in West and Central Africa. His stance reflects a larger sentiments across Africa, particularly among younger generation and Pan-Africanist. So we have seen Julius Malema being vocal on these countries. And one thing he is vocal about it is a colonial legacy and neo-colonization, because Malema has seen a lot and is someone who has learned the history and is fighting for African people, though there is rumors that because he's supporting this and this, but the larger part of it is fighting for Pan-Africanism. And he has urged that France continues to exert and form in a form of neo-colony or neo-colonial control over African countries despite their formal independence. He criticized the policies that allow France to benefit from African resources, influence political system, and maintain economic control, particularly through the CFA franc currency system, which he views as a tool that keep African nations economically dependent on France. We learned about, there's a video I did about CFA franc. This is the money that is a currency that France left behind to control the economy of African countries. So through this CFA, these countries from Central Africa and countries from West Africa, they cannot be economically strong because they are still using the currency that France put there. So that means they are still using the laws and rules of France. And that means France is still colonizing these African countries indirectly. That means when we see influence of France in political influence where they are activating coups in these countries, it's because they want to put their puppets there. So automatically France is still in charge. We can see economic control through this CFA franc, this currency that France has put there. One of the main criticism, a currency used by 14 countries and pegged initially to the French franc, now to the euro. Many see this as a form of economic subjection that presents or prevents country from establishing their own currencies, their own monetary policies, and fully benefiting from their own resources. Now Malema has urged that France uses the system to ensure that former colonies remain financially reliant to France, and which is true because these countries, they cannot build their bank. They are using the bank of France. The investors they are using is from France because France are the one who are controlling the resources, controlling the price of the resources, controlling the economic system of these countries, because one who controls the currency controls you. That's why we see dollar is controlling. We have cash, we have Kenyan shillings, but dollar is still strong. Those who have dollars in Kenya, they are making it big. Another thing is that Malema also opposes is the influence of France military military invention and the occupation of in Africa, okay? Especially in the regions like the Sahel. The France military presence, while officially framed as a counterterrorism effort, is seen by critics like Malema as a way of France to protect its interest and exert influence rather than generally supports African security. It's true. France have their military in Sahel, claiming that they are keeping peace. They are keeping the militias away, but this is a way of them protecting their influence in Africa. It's a way of them protecting the people who are exploiting minerals from Africa. It's a way of protecting their, we call what, their wealth here in Africa. Because why do you choose to keep peace in Sahel where they don't need you? They have their own military, but you choose to put your military there so that you can protect your influence on that nation. So another thing that Malema and EFF promotes is a Pan-Africanism. This advocating the united of independent Africa, free from former colonial powers. By calling France to withdraw, Malema seeks to inspire African leaders to strengthen economic and political collaboration across the continent. The vision aligns with the idea that Africa can build self-reliant system and reduce dependence on foreign powers, prioritizing African solution for African issues. As I always say, Africa is for Africans, but we see nowadays Africa is not for Africans anymore. Yes, Africa is for Africans, but there is someone in the middle. Africa is for France, and then France control Africa. And that's what we are seeing in many occasions. So we have to support Pan-Africanism and African autonomy. We have to promote Africa to stand for itself. We have to promote the unity of African countries so that we can be independent and make our own decisions. You cannot tell me the issue of Nairobi, Kenya, the issue of Kenya is being solved in Geneva, Switzerland. The issue of Kenya is being solved in Russia. The issue of Kenya is being solved in a group of some white people in Europe or white people in China. No. We are capable of solving our own issues. That's why we have AU, African Union. What is the work of African Union? What is the work of African Union that bring together 54 countries of Africa? Here is a panel where we can solve our own issues. But you know what? African Union, according to what I hear too, is that it is submitting to the Europeans. It's submitting to the white supremacy. And that's why that's what we are trying to fight, or Julius Malema is trying to fight. And that's why he is sending France away or telling France to withdraw so that we as Africans can run our own business as we do. Again, Malema is influencing younger generation. His message to the younger Africans who are increasingly aware of the effects of colonizations and neo-colonizing is big, because many African youths view France's presence in the continent as a barrier to progress. Okay? Now, a lot of youths, they see the white supremacy, they see France, they see Portugal, they see Germany, they see Europe in Africa as a tool of their barriers to prevent them from growing. Now, Aligning with Malema calls to end French involvement, his rhetoric has helped energize a new generation of African leaders and activists committed to redefining Africa's future independence of former colonies. And that's why comes a part of someone like Burkina Faso President Ibrahim Traore. He is young, energetic, and he knows about colonization and neo-colonization. And that's why when he took power, the first step is to tell France to withdraw. The first step was to cancel the license of some companies that are exploiting from its country. The first step is preaching and advocating of Pan-Africanism. So this is what Julius Malema is trying to fight for. Solidarity with anti-imperialist movement. Malema too and the EFF, they are advocating for this. Often the voice supports the global anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist movement, drawing comparison between African struggles against colonial powers and broader resistance against Western hegemony by pushing France out. Now, Malema aims to stand in solidarity with other nations and groups fighting for autonomy, asserting Africans' right to control its own destiny. Because our destinies, as I've told you, our destiny is being controlled in a panel somewhere in New York. Our destiny as Africans is being controlled somewhere in France. Our destiny is being controlled somewhere in Britain. So, these sentiments of Julius Malema reflects growing frustrations with France's historical and current role in Africa and underscore of a broader shift towards African nations reclaiming agency over their own political and economy and social futures. Because if our own agendas are not being run by the black people, by the African presidents, by the African leaders, then what are we? We are just just the face of other people, the mirror of other countries. So we are promoting Pan-Africanism and teaching the youth about Pan-Africanism and teaching them about the history of their countries, about neo-colonization, about colonization, about the effect of these foreign countries in Africa, so that we can reclaim our country back, so that we can reclaim Africa back. The only way we can reclaim Africa back and bring back Africa to Africans is by sending this white supremacy away from Africa. Is by us Africans have to decide by ourselves. It's by us Africans making decisions for our African countries. Not our decisions are being made somewhere. As we have seen, the issue of IMF, the issue of World Bank is a way that these corporations are giving debts to countries so that we can be indebted to them for all years. You cannot come back of it. See how Ghana is falling, how Nigeria is falling, how Kenya is falling because of these debts that we are being given by these white supremacists. So Julius Malema is in the front line fighting for African unity, fighting for African white oneness, fighting for Pan-Africanism, fighting the neo-colonization and telling the white supremacy to move away from Africa so that Africa can stand for itself. France have to withdraw from Africa. France have to remove their military from Africa. France have to withdraw the CFA franc, the currencies. These 14 countries need to have their own currencies. They need to control their own economy. And that's where we will start growing our countries. So I don't know what you think about this topic. Do you think EFF, Julius Malema is on the right track? Do you think France has more positive in Africa than negative? What is your thought on this? Tell me in the comment section. Of course, I am the Kenyan Beast and we are doing it the African way every day, every time. Until next episode, peace be with you.